Dan Miller has been granted a $120,000 mortgage loan. When signing the papers to purchase his new home, he must pay the closing costs shown. What are the total closing costs to the nearest dollar? Okay, so closing costs are costs involved in closing on a home. Pretty self-explanatory. This can include all kinds of menial fees. You can see here on the table, we have an application fee, a credit check fee, points, appraisal, title search, title insurance, an attorney's fee, documentation stamp. So as a homeowner, it kind of seems like a lot of nonsense, a lot of excuses to charge us money, right? However, it's part of the business of buying a home. So we want to know, how much is it going to cost Dan Miller in closing costs? So that's just going to be a sum of all of the fees that we see here. So if we want to find the total closing costs, we just need to sum up everything in the table. Alright, so it includes the application fee, the borrower's credit check. Now notice when we get to points, so we've already accounted for these two, when we get to points, it doesn't give us a dollar amount, it says 2% of the mortgage. So we just need to calculate 2% of the mortgage loan. We're told the mortgage loan is $120,000, so we need to find 2% of that. So we take 0.02, multiply it by the loan amount, and we get $2,400. So that's going to be the number that we add to our total, $2,400 for points. Continuing down the list, we add our appraisal fee, our title search, our title insurance, our attorney's fee. It's quite a long list of fees. So we've got the $350, the $215, the $450, the $400. We get to documentation stamp, and once again are given a percentage. It's 0.30%, which we still have to convert to a decimal. So you still have to move that decimal 2 to the left, which becomes 0.003. 0.003 times 120,000. That's going to give us our documentation stamp, which comes out to $360. So we add $360 onto our list. Finally, we have the processing fee, which is 1.25%. Converted to a decimal, remember 2 to the left, is 0.0125. 0.0125 times the amount of our mortgage loan comes out to $1,500. $1,500. Okay, so now we've got this total closing cost equation all set up. Again, it was just a sum of everything in the table. We had to take a few percentages and find that percentage of the mortgage loan before actually adding in the dollar amount, but now we've got that out of the way, and it's pretty straightforward. So in the end, we sum up all of the costs seen here, and we find that the total closing costs are $5,765. Okay, let's look at another example involving closing costs. So we've got Nala, and she's buying her first home for $125,000. She's been granted a mortgage loan at an annual interest rate of 8.5% for 20 years with a $25,000 down payment. Closing costs are 2% of the amount of the mortgage loan and will be financed as part of the mortgage. What is the actual amount financed with the mortgage? Okay, let's read that again because this is not the typical situation. Not uncommon, but not typical. So we've got someone buying their own home, and she's been giving her APR, how long she'll pay for, which is the 20 years, and the amount of her down payment. Closing costs are 2% of the amount of the mortgage loan. Okay, closing costs are 2% of the amount of the mortgage loan and will be financed as part of the mortgage, meaning if you think back to our last example where we had a guy that had about $6,000 in closing costs, these would often be costs that you would pay up front out of pocket. Before you even move into your home, you'd be writing that check for $6,000. In this case, she's bundling up those closing costs into her mortgage loan. So she's adding money onto the cost of her home. She's not only financing her home, but financing those closing costs as well, which brings her total loan amount up. And that's what we're trying to figure out. So the actual amount financed not only includes the $125,000 minus that down payment, but it also includes the closing costs. Okay? So, to find amount financed, we are going to have to take however much of the mortgage was financed, so we'll call it our mortgage loan, and we have to add on whatever the total closing costs were. Now, pretty easy to figure out what our mortgage loan is going to be. It's just going to be whatever the cash price of the house is, and we'll subtract off whatever down payment she's made. So even just by reading this, you probably could have quickly found that if she's paying a cash price of $125,000 and she's able to put down a down payment of $25,000, that her mortgage loan amount is $100,000. So we're going to take that $100,000 and plug it in as our mortgage loan amount. However, we also have to find our total closing costs. Our total closing costs. Now remember, in the text, it says that our total closing costs are 2%, so 0.02, of the amount of the mortgage. We just found the mortgage loan to be $100,000. So again, the closing costs are 2% of the amount of the mortgage. So we need to find 2% of $100,000, which hopefully will be pretty easy. It's just $2,000. So finally, that means that the amount that we financed is going to equal that mortgage loan of $100,000 plus the closing costs, which brings us to $102,000 for her total amount financed.